It's been a long, long time since I had you on my mind. Wow, welcome back. This is the Live Project. And my name is Amuna Yisrael. And like I said, it's been a long, long time. Indeed, it feels like a very long time. I've missed you guys. And there they go talking as soon as I started. I've missed you guys. I've been, what they say, uber busy, just doing a lot of stuff. Had to switch hats for a minute there. And sometimes it's good. Um, and then sometimes you miss your routine. But definitely this information is heavy. And when you eat heavy information, you do need a rest. It helps to keep your mind level headed, because this is not like you're reading, Superman comics. It's a history that it runs so deep that the rest. I did a little bit of music, and music, as you know, helps to raise your vibrations when you change to your artistic self, so that you can find a way to express these feelings, so that they don't. Because some people say this is so heavy, it's so heavy, Amuna, I can't take it, it's so heavy. And so this is a way, and it was time, most I, the universe, universal principles and laws that tell you give and receive. And so it is good from time to time to stop, change gears a little bit, process what you're hearing, process what you're seeing, and diffuse and take time to deal with. So we've been on a break, but it has been a bit good break because, like I said, I've had an opportunity to express myself in other ways. So welcome back once again. This is Imuni Israel. And we almost at the end of the month. We're doing women's history, and we were in the midst of, actually, yeah, we got 2 more days. We're in the midst of, right in the midst. It's just been weird. It's been strange, but we're going to rock with it. We're in the midst of reading 30 Years a Slave by Lewis Hughes, and we've been missing a few days, but we're definitely going to pick it back up. We have 2 more days to the end of so I think that, reading two narratives at the same time, but we have 2 more days to the end of Women's History Month. So we're going to finish this out, and then we're going to finish off Lewis Hughes and then continue to go. So once again, thank everybody for tuning in. If you missed some of, I have been commenting on the underground as it relates to what we're reading and the accuracy of what we're seeing. So if you've missed those commentaries from the show, it comes on every Wednesday. I believe tomorrow's Wednesday. So definitely the underground on Wednesdays. And definitely I'd like to hear your commentary as well. So if you're watching it and you're processing some of what you're seeing through what we're reading, definitely hit us back up and let us know. We're at this point, Mrs. Mildred Graves. And we're reading out of the same book, Weevils in the Wheat, Mrs. Mildred Graves. And we're going to read a little bit of her testimony. Again, for those who are new to this, if you desire to read as well, feel free to reach out to me via under this video or social media. I know we haven't had too many volunteers. We had a few volunteers, but definitely would like to hear from you. So give me 1 second here while I make sure everything is secure, and then we're going to go ahead and read. All right, let's roll. I'm back. Miss Mildred Graves, 1837. She was born. This is the interview, 1937. So Miss Mildred seems to be 100 years old. It says not 100, she 100. There may be some confusion between this informant and the next one. Their names are the same. Both are about 100 years old, and their street addresses are almost identical. However, one lives in Richmond and the other in Fredericksburg. The content of the interview indicates two different informants also, as the informants have married after the war and one following married during slavery. So these are some of the notes oftentimes that the editor, in case there's any confusion as we're reading, because this is firsthand accounts. It's straight from the horse's mouth. So this Mildred Graves says, I was born in Hanover County, Virginia, About 100 years ago, my owner was named Tinsley. The Tinsleys was good to me, cause at times things was pretty bad, but on the whole day was decent people. What kind of work I did? Most everything, child. I cooked, then I was a housemaid, and I raised I don't know how many children. Or children, she said. You know, in them days, they didn't have any doctors. Well, I was always good when it can't come to the sick. So that was mostly my job. I was also what you call a midwife too. Whenever any of the white folks round Hanover was going to have babies, they always got word to Mr. Tinsley that they want to hire me for that time. So he let me go. 'Twas money for him, you know. He would give me only a few cents, but that was kind of good of him to do that. Again, for those who are new, I make a little commentary or just highlight some of the very interesting mental thought processes that she seems to have accepted her position as a slave and now even attributing kindness to the master for giving her what's due her. Like it was kind of him to give me some few pennies off of her own labor. And this is oftentimes, quote unquote, black people give away their labor for free still with this thought process that someone else is valued more than you. And if you command or ask for what you're actually worth, then you're being greedy, you're being this, you're being that. At the same time, if it was somebody of another nationality, you would pay without question. And this goes into whether it be a name brand bag or name brand shoes or clothes, you'll pay it. If your brother or sister comes out with it, all of a sudden they're robbing you. Very interesting, but let me continue. It's rooted right up in this space. It says he would give me only a few cents, but that was kind of good of him to do that. Plenty of niggas was hired out and didn't get nothing. Again, comparative analysis, feeling like she's better off than others who got nothing at all. Sometimes I had 3 and 4 sick at the same time. Master used to tell me I was a valuable slave for him, not her. They used to come for me both day and night. You know, it's funny thing how babies has a way of coming here when it's dark. One night, Miss Leek sent for me. 'Twas around 12 o'clock and everybody was asleep when her husband, Judge Leek, come all the way out a breakfasting for me. He said to Mr. Tinsley that his wife was mighty sick and they was afraid she was going to die and please let me come to see her. I went and when I got there, she had 2 doctors from Richmond, but they wouldn't do nothing for her. Something was very wrong with Mrs. Leek, they say, and they want to call another doctor. Mind you, there was 2 there already. I told them I could bring her round, but they laugh at me and say, "Get back, darky. We mean business and don't want any witch doctors or hoodoo stuff." So, one moment, please. Listen. Funny how they call her, and then when she gets there, the ego of these so-called doctors are telling her to get back, darky. We mean business, and we don't want any witch doctor hoodoo stuff. Very interesting. Mrs. Leek heard them, and she said between pains she want me. So they said, if you want her for your doctor, we will go. I stayed and worked from 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock. I tell you, that was the toughest case I ever had. I did everything I knowed and some things I didn't know. She's funny. I don't know how I done it, but anyway, a son was born that morning and that boy lived. He didn't weigh 5 pounds, I know, but I fixed him up. Mrs. Leek got well too. Even the doctors that had called me bad names said many praises for me. The baby was named Andrew, and he was my child. After he got older, he used to steal over to Mr. Tinsley to see me. He would bring me things, eats, money, candy, and pretty earrings. One I wore in my ear till the Yankees came and stole them. He used to teach me to write my name, and I learned lots of things from that boy. He told me his father tried to buy me, but Mr. Tinsley wouldn't sell me. Then he went to war, and that blessed child was killed. I know he died in fighting. So she's expressing this emotional attachment as a midwife to this apparent European young boy And this little boy apparently remembered who she was and was showing her some kind of favor. It says, about the war, that was some time. I don't know so much. I worked all the time. I know that one day I was in the field working or working. The Yankee soldiers was marching, about six of them stopped, took a razor blade and cut off my hair. I had long black hair that hung way down my back. I kicked a fit as much as I could, but I couldn't stop them. Another time I was going to see about one of my children, white children, and the Yankees stopped me and took off my gold earrings that my child Andrew gave me. I felt worse over this than I did over losing my hair. Of course, they used to bother old other color folks too, you see. One reason they got me so much was that I was living on the road that led from Washington to Richmond. Sorry. One day it was Sunday afternoon and five of us colored girls was walking out. Some Yankees stopped us at and took razors and cut us on our arms, legs, and our backs. This was new to us because Mr. Tinsdale didn't ever beat or hurt us. Tinsley tried to find out who did it, but he couldn't. He was real mad at them, and he said if he could find them, he'll shoot them. My hands and arms hurt so bad, but I had to fix mine up so I could help others that didn't know what to do or how anybody to do it for them. And during the war, I stayed with Mr. Tinsley. After the war, when I was set free, I come to Richmond to work. I worked for lots of people. Then I met Willie Graves and I married him. He was from Washington, D.C. She, Mrs. Mildred Graves, she says, I have 9 children and my husband died when the youngest was a baby, 2 years old. After he died, I had to get out and work again. This time I had to cook, wash, iron, clean, nurse the sick. I have attended many births in Richmond, and many of the important people of the city are my babies, quote unquote. In them days in Richmond, when doctors was few, I worked with a lot of them. I also used to shroud the dead. So this is very interesting, and because I went to a very interesting event for Women's History Month, and they were talking about quote unquote, black women in corporate America, and I was listening for a time, and then I spoke, and it's just interesting how right now we're reading about Mrs. Mildred Graves and how it is that most of her narrative is about her working. And I was trying to share, this is why reading this stuff is so very important, that you cannot compare the quote black woman's plight to any other woman in this space and time, because from slavery and beyond, she's always been working. Even if she had a husband who, because of the institution, could not protect, could not provide in the ways that he needed to. So she was always working. Now she's saying after the war, meaning after the emancipation, she's still working. Her husband died and she still had to work. She was the mother of 9 children. And so certain expectations that people have, or lack of understanding of the character, or why quote unquote black women are the way they are, they never really had the luxury to stay at home and totally be provided for as a community of people, because they were always working, and as we see here, the children, and in other places, the children came second as it related to taking care of master's business, as it related to other people. We were taught as a community to put ourselves on the back burner, put our health on the back burner, put our mental status on the back burner, put our desires and thoughts on the back burner, because while you were here to serve, as we read, someone else said, you didn't come here to worship, you came here to serve me. And so as a servant, and in a society where that's what you were viewed as, you did not oftentimes invest in yourself. And we see that carry over today. It's a level of codependency, and I'm going to keep going back to that relationship, that dysfunctional model of the narcissist or the abuser with that makes a codependent. And as a people, oftentimes we're codependent in the sense that we don't feel we have any power. We don't have any power. It seems like here in this society, we're always begging for what we need and we're always complaining for what we get. Very interesting stuff. I'll go into that later. But there's another Miss Mildred Graves. This is why they noted it. But she was born in 42. It says, yes, sir, I'm 95 years old, but I can lay here in my bed and think about my honeymoon just as it were yesterday. Show used to jump the broom. One day my husband calls, he wasn't that then. Well, he come to me in the meat house and say he want a word at a supper. I was a house gal and stayed in the house and he worked in the field. So we didn't get chance to get together often. I met him that evening and he walked down to the pines and sat on the fence. Down there, he asked me to marry him. I say, all right, because I was tired of living in the house where there was no fun. So we just stepped over the broomstick that next day and we was married. Like that was really quick. When I told Miss Julia she'd give me a cast off dress of her, and that fit me perfectly. After the war, we had a real show enough wedding with a preacher that cost $1. So the most that she can remember is her marriage. She said the next day because it was boring in the big house. And this is also, again, I wanted to do something on field slaves and house slaves. I touched on it briefly, but again, we're reading into the thoughts of them themselves and how the general consensus oftentimes that your life was better is not necessarily true on either side. It says Mrs. Phyllis Graves, she was born in 1865. She was born during the time of emancipation. I was born August 22nd, 1865. Mother belonged to Lawyer Watson on High Street next to High Street Church. Mother was the youngest child of a slave. We stayed with her people till she died when I went to Major Cook School, the only school I ever been to. I went to Grace Street Church, the Sunday school and church. Sis Jackie used to gather up all the little children in the neighborhood and carry them. Did you know Mama Jack? Yes, I know Mama Jack. Everybody call her Mammy. I never had a colored teacher in my life. Father Gibson was preacher. All we children call him Father Gibson. It says courtship. Young man was allowed to stay only 3/4 of an hour. That's all long, and some grown person allowed went long too. For instance, night before I married, Mr. G came to see me, raining hard, gave him hat, told go now, gal, and boy, stay all night. When I had company knock at the door, I was never allowed to stay indoor and talk. I married at home and had a double reception. So this is what she's also remembering. Phyllis Graves is remembering. She wouldn't remember slavery to the fullest because she was just born when it was finished, and she's remembering courtship. So we're gonna read another woman. Like I said, this book has masculine and feminine, male and female testimonies, and the men have some very interesting testimonies. We might pick that up on the other side after we finish going through these female testimonies. But let's read Amanda Harris. It's a short one, 1848, unknown interviewer. It says, Grandma died in wartime, so I guess I started smoking a year or two before she died. When I was about 14 or 15, talk about childhood smoking, right? This is nothing new. People be like, oh, these children smoking. They've been doing this stuff, man. She was smoking at 13 or 14. Used to see her puffing on that old pipe or hair, and one day I asked her what fun she got out of it. Tain't no fun, child, she told me, but it's powerful, lot of easement. So the grandmother was smoking for stress reasons. Smoke away your trouble, dadder. Blow all trouble and worry away in the smoke. Now that I'm old, as she was, I know what she mean. Again, ain't nothing much change. You understand? People still smoking cigarettes, smoking chiefing, smoking spliffs, and smoking different things. Why? For the same reason, stress and trouble on their head, and it's some kind of therapeutic, and they take it, although it's having an adverse effect on your health. For them, they're taking it as there's something that's therapeutic to release the stress. So her grandmother, as she remembered, was a smoker, and she picked up smoking. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we just learning what happened. It says Anna Harris, 1846. It says, no white man ever been in my house. Don't allow it. They sold my sister Kate. I saw it with these here eyes. Sold her in 1860, and I ain't seen nor hear of her since. Folks say white people's is all right these days. She say maybe they is, and maybe they isn't. But I can't stand to see them. Not on my place. So Anna Harris she was bout it, as they say. She wasn't letting no Euros coming up in her spot because she did not forget what they did to her sister Kate and her experience. So she was bout it. We see Annie Harris, and they don't know when she was born. It says, when freedom came, we was dancing and a prancing and a yelling with a big bonfire just a blazing, and the white folks not daring to come outside the big house. So before they would prance, it's funny how things change. Now they would prance around and they was the boss, but when they no longer had that power, they was in her place, they was pent up in the house. It says, just they made them up, cause pretty soon everybody for miles around was singing freedom songs. One went like this: eyes free, eyes free, eyes free at last. Thank God Almighty, eyes free at last. That sound familiar? That sound familiar. That sound like what Martin Luther King put in a speech. Free at last, free at last. Once was a mourner just like you. Thank God Almighty, I was free at last. I fasted and I prayed till I came through. Thank God Almighty, I was free at last. That's the freedom song. So somebody probably gonna recreate the freedom song. I'm gonna go ahead and go down. They have some in the row here, catching up on some stuff that we missed a couple of days. Caroline Johnson Harris, born 1843. She says, didn't have to ask Massa or nothing. Just go to Aunt Sue and tell her you want to get mated. She tell us to think about it for 2 days, because Marion was sacred in the eyes, she says, of Jay, or Jesus here she puts. Order or after 2 days, Mose and I went back and said we done thought about it and still want to get married. Then she called all the slaves at a task to pray for the union that God was going to make. Pray we stay together and have lots of children and none of them get sold away from the parents. Then she lay a broomstick across the sill of the house we're going to live in and join our hands together. Before we step over it, she asked us once more if we were sure we want to get married. Of course, we say yes. Then she say, in the eyes, she say, of Jay or Jesus here, step into Holy Land and make the money. I guess that's supposed to be matrimony, make the money. When we stepped across the broom, we was married. Was bad luck to touch the broom. Folks always step high because they didn't want no spell cast on them. Aunt Sue used to say, whichever one touched the stick was going to die first. So they had all of this superstition going on in her particular space in Virginia. Her Aunt Sue was the one that she's saying they didn't have to ask the master. So he may have given her, this is the first time we're hearing that the slave actually had, usually they had to go to the master. They had to go to who the person belonged to, the enslaved individual, and ask permission. And as you know, up until this point, any offspring that they did have wasn't theirs. It was that of the property of the master who owned the woman. Miss Della Harris, 1852. So I pray our history, as many of our brothers and sisters has long forgotten, quote unquote, Black history, because we almost in April right now. We running a little marathon here, pacing ourselves, trying to bust this out, throughout the months. This is no hype. So prayerfully by this end of this, we'll be well educated on some of the practices firsthand, no rhetoric. Miss Della Harris, I don't know just how old I is. Mama sent me to private school with white children for 1 week. I was 13 years old at the time of Lee's surrender. I belonged to Peter or Bill Turnbull, Warrenton, North Carolina. And then she said, put this down. My mama and family all belonged to Peter Buck as his slaves. We didn't work till after the war. Then we came to Petersburg. I went to dancing school with the white folks and could dance any kind of dance sets. My father was a musician, or a musicianaire, she says. He belonged to John Carthen in Warrenton, North Carolina. In them days, you had to make your master's and Mrs. name or take them. In slavery time, when a slave married, he had to ask his master and Mrs., my mama said. So you see, again, that the Sioux story that we just read was kind of like an anomaly. It wasn't something that was normal. Masters usually yay or nayed who they felt was suitable buck and fine breeding wrenches, as they would say, who was suitable to be a good buck and a fine breeding wrench. All righty then. We never went to church. We used to hear the bell ringing loud. Baby, yes, clear and strong. No, never seen Sunday school. And then first time I went to church, I looked all around and baby, I thought that I was in heaven. I wasn't long, Miss Sue, for I got religion. It's funny when they say they got religion. They got religion. And yes, I joined the church, 15 years old I was. Never will forget the time or the place. Then I lived here with Aunt Mama's sister, who was named Cat Williams or Kate Williams. Her husband was my uncle, and he worked and died at the White House in Washington City. And we read before in this same narrative that, okay, somebody's texting me. We read before in the same narrative that it was said that they used to call Washington, D.C., they used to call it Washington City. And so that's very interesting. Please, sorry about the beep. Hold on one second. All right, so the thing could stop beeping. All right. So they used to call it Washington City. So that's a little bit of history there. It says, boom, boom. Her husband was my uncle, and he worked on, died in White House in Washington City. I don't know the name of the president he worked for, but you can find that out in them books. You know, you young folks call them records. Yes, child, I'm proud of my age. Never gave nobody no trouble. I have 8 children and now only 1 son living. Peter Turnbull was good to all his slaves, as far as I know. Mama was a cook in slavery. Because remember, she was, pretty young. She died in Petersburg, yes, right here in this hole. No, mama never owned anything, always rented. She ain't never owned nothing but a parcel of children. My mama was a genuine Indian. Some people say you can own Indians. I don't know how come, but I do know she was owned by these people. But she surely was an Indian. Everybody knows me in Virginia. When I used to be in dining room service, I would hear the white folks talk. And do you know, Miss Sue, you can hear a lot that way. And so, oftentimes we hear people say, I got Indian in my family. So we got Miss Della Harris saying she got Indian in her family. And this talk was going way back. Today, Indian in your family is translated as, oh, you got quote unquote good hair, or you have certain features that people say, I got Indian in my family. But in this space and time, that it may have meant that, but it also, like she said, the thought or the consensus was if you have Indian in your family, or if your mother is an Indian, you couldn't have been a slave. And she's saying she know that she's hear that said, but she's not understanding because they were slaves. So she doesn't know how that worked out. Being the fact that her mother was a genuine Indian, according to their laws, you couldn't own a genuine Indian because the mother would have been freeborn. So yeah, that Indian in your family is coming from far. Give me 1 second. Let me get a little swig of water here, and I'll be right back. All right. Mrs. Della Harris. She says, Martha said he couldn't sell me because I was so little, just kept me for to wait on the little children in the house. Talk about child labor laws, right? You know what I mean? Now they say, oh no, you can't have children watching children, but that's what they did. They used to have children watching children. We read another narrative. She was like 4 or so, and the baby actually flipped out of the what do you call it, the carriage, and then she got beat for it. We read that narrative. I think it was last week. That's just interesting. Marcia said he couldn't sell. Okay, Miss Sue, you'll have to give me something for telling you all this here. If it ain't nothing but a house cake. Yo, she's like, yo, Miss Sue, you got to pay. You know what I mean? I give you too much information. I've seen lots of this world and travel. Done been to Baltimore City. Done been to Philadelphia. I ain't going to give you no more, gal. And then she gives her more, right? Yes, in Lynchburg. I worked at Mount Royal School where Mrs. McDonald was manager. If I stayed long enough, I might have got some learning. But I stayed only 1 year. Got tired of that place. From one season to another is a year, ain't it? Oh Lord. Gonna stop now, Miss Sue. Ain't gonna give you no more. Man, gonna say, Miss Sue, where in the devil did you get this stuff? Gal, you are a mess. You gonna write most of all that book about Della? Go on now, that's enough. Miss Della is like, she bugging out, like she running the reporter, telling her to get out of here. I'm not giving you no more. And then she gonna keep talking. It said, in them days, children were children. Not everybody is grown. Children then was seen and not heard. When old persons came round, mama sent us out, and you better not be seen. Not everybody grown. I always enjoyed good health. Never had a doctor in my life, not even when my children was born. This rubbing when people got pain just rubs it in. Eating so much at late hours is cause you old folks dying. So she giving you some science right now. Eating too late. She says, all mama's children was healthy. Yes. Mama fed us good victuals from white folks. White man's ice is cola. I tell you, we had good owners. Sorry for my conjecture. Sometimes I can't help it. I didn't see sunset when I was a child. Always went to bed early. And Caribbean people say that. Don't let the night air or the morning dew set on you. It says, child, I wish I could call back them days of slavery. Mama said people lived so much longer because they took care of themselves. All this here education and people just now got it. Do you think Mrs. Harris' education has helped our race? Well, child, this is what I guess the interviewer is asking. This is what the interviewer is asking her. She says, well, child, I don't know. Folks are so different now. Show, or for show, I think she said. Color folks now, some is messy. Don't know how to be polite. Talking about lightning days. It's lightning at everybody's house. Lord have mercy on these here young folks. And deliver me from the plantation, I pray. How's she gonna say deliver her from the plantation? At the next point, she said it was better on the plantation. She wasn't the first one who's attesting to thinking that the corporal punishment and the system of slavery made for better behavior. Interesting. The following portion of Dallas Harris' interview missing from the Virginia State Library copy is found in a rare book room. So if you're in some places that have rare book rooms, and if you're in Chicago and these different places that Chicago has a huge, I was just reading about it, a huge collection of works, and the name of the library escapes me. When I remember, I'll tell you. They were saying the library is in need of repair, but it boasts a huge collection of narratives from slavery. And when I remember, I'll tell you. Sorry, it just skipped my mind right now. Courting them days was like everything I reckon you all do nowadays. You promise to be the man. No, you promise to obey the man, but before you finish, it's cussing, honey. In olden days, yo, she's funny. In olden days, husbands loved, showed God did tend to wife and took care of them, and they had to stay home because it was always a new baby. I tell you, Miss Sue, man ought never had you to find history because you're going to tell it all. As I said, we loved it. Is the young folks marrying for love? They don't stay together long enough to warm hands. She said, don't stay together warm hands. We went to church together and prayed God, led prayer meetings, and yes, sir, would feel good. Now you all done start opening theaters on Sunday. Miss Sue, all that stuff you putting down will sure make the man laugh. And then she has a song here. Hi ho Johnson gal, hi ho Johnson gal, hi ho. Johnson gal is the gal for me. I guess the song. You see, they was such a person as the Johnson gal. The boys just start that way to get all the gals to perking up. When they hear that, you know they're gonna start calling real names the next time. After they sing Johnson gal 3 or 4 times, never know how many times they're gonna sing it. Then someone change, hi ho, the Henry gal, Henry gal, Henry gal, hi ho, the Henry gal. The Henry gal is the gal for me. That means the Henry gal come forward and do her steps in the ring. And when she done all she know, they call for some other gal the same way. Most times they call all the gals, but sometimes they leave out one gal just for meanness. And any gal that's left out feel pretty or mighty poly about it too. So I guess they had a little show where the men would, as she says, sing this song, and then they switch it up, and then of course, you waiting for your name, and if your name is not called, you feel terrible. So she's pretty funny, Miss Della Harris. She gave some information as we're learning. This is in Virginia. If you look up Mississippi, you might get some different narratives. You look up Georgia, you might get some different narratives. Each culture, each space, each crop had different cultures, although it was all slavery. They had different requirements based on what it is, the master, based on whether it was a big plantation or a small plantation. So all of these things are to be considered as we're speaking about slavery and trying to place it in the context of understanding the institution. It's not unilateral. It wasn't across the board where all of this was happening. As we're reading, it was the culture. Each plantation, as a matter of fact, had its own plantation culture. Some subscribed to corporal punishment or capital punishment. Some overseers and masters did, and some did not. Some went into other ways of dealing with quote unquote disobedient slaves. You understand? So this is all, people get mad when you say that. They say, oh, you're trying to, you're trying to justify. No, come on, we have to be honest, because I'm gonna say, oh no, Miss Della Harris, you're lying. That's her testimony. And we have countless testimony in this book in itself. It's over 300 testimonies, and there's way more testimonies than this that's telling you. Some say they've never been beaten. They had to rationalize. There's a term for those who are listening, and then I'm going to relinquish at this point, and hopefully, what's today, Tuesday? Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to read tonight a little bit of 30 years in chains or 30 years a slave. But there's a term, learn helplessness. And maybe we'll watch the little video together. I will come back and watch that video. There's a little video I want to show you to see how interesting this is in their studies, quote unquote, of this term, learn helplessness, and how in just one sitting, the individuals felt helpless based on certain tests they were given. But after 400 years of being under a certain regime or an institution, people curse, quote unquote, Black people. They curse them to say, oh, you're playing the victim. I want to explore that a little more. So definitely stay tuned. I'm gonna get back on track. I'm doing also, a book is coming out, so stay tuned for that. It's called Solonomics 101. And so I'll tell you more about that. And so I'm at the moment I'm working on a course, and so I'll give you a heads up. Once again, thank you for tuning in. I got some more work to do on the other side. It's nap time up in here, and so I'm just trying to get it all in. But until next time, my name is Amuna Yisrael. I want to thank you for bearing with us and sticking with us and sharing the word and giving your feedback. And I pray you have a blessed day. One.